In this lesson, we will be painting a poinsettia. The first step to this painting is to prep the paper and paint the background color. Painter's tape works well to mark off a nice white border and also secures the paper to the work surface. We are going to use turquoise color paint, or a light blue. Using long horizontal strokes, we're going to fill in the paint color across the entire surface of the paper. Once the background color has completely dried, we can begin painting the poinsettia leaves using a small flat and small round brush. It's good also to have a paper towel and a water cup on hand as well. The first colors we will need are red and white. Beginning with the red paint, we're going to dip the flat brush gently into the paint. We just want to get the very tip of the bristles into that paint and not really overload the brush. Find the center of the paper. We're going to start there with the first few leaves, and they're going to be smaller in size. Poinsettia leaves are typically pointed at each end and wider and rounder in the middle. It's better to have less paint on the brush and have to get more paint frequently than have too much, which will lessen the control that you have, resulting in sloppy looking leaves. Usually, I start with just 3 leaves at the center. You may notice that in tight spots, I'm using the thin edge of the brush and not the thicker flat edge. That's going to give me more control. Now let's work on another round of leaves. This second round of leaves is going to get a little bit bigger than the first one, and they'll each be placed in between the leaves we've already made. We should end up with again having 3 leaves for a total of 6. Now we're switching to the round brush, and we're going to dip that into the white paint and get just a little bit of white paint on the tip of the bristles, similar to how we got just a little bit of red paint on the tip of the flat brush. We want to work quickly to add white outlines around each of the leaves that we have painted. It's okay if the white mixes a bit on the paint surface with the red. This will actually look nicer and less harsh than if it were a pure bright white paint line. If it mixes too much, wipe the brush off on your paper towel. That way you don't accidentally contaminate the white paint in your palette, and it will stay nice and clean instead of turning pink. Now switch back to the flat brush to add some more red leaves. As we continue to add more red leaves, they are going to get bigger and bigger with each round. So in this round, they are placed between the previous leaves. So when you are done, you're going to be adding 6 new leaves because that's how many spaces there would be between the ones we already created. We could stop here with the red leaves, but I really want to fill the entire paper, so I'm going to add more red leaves. I'm going to go around one more time with even bigger red leaves between the ones that we just painted. It's okay if some of the leaves go off the edge of the paper. We don't need to worry about that. Now switch back to the round brush. We are going to add the white outlines around all of the new leaves that we just painted. Remember to wipe off the brush if the paint gets too contaminated, if you get some of that red on the bristles, because you don't want to accidentally turn the white paint in your palette pink. On some leaves, we can even make them look like they are slightly curled, just as you may see when observing actual poinsettia plant leaves. This next part uses a toothpick for some fine line detailing, and that takes a lot of patience. For a simpler painting, you could just skip this step, but if you're not, you're going to dip the end of the toothpick into the white paint. We are essentially drawing with it to create the veins on each leaf. I'm starting with the center vertical line, so I'm going to put that in on each of the red leaves that I've created, and I'm going to start with just some of the leaves instead of doing it to all of the leaves. After the central lines have been added, the center veins, it's time to start adding the symmetrical lines on either side for each of the leaves. So we're going to just do that again using the toothpick. I like to keep them slightly curved to give it more of a natural, organic look. Now we are just going to repeat that same technique with all of the remaining red leaves until there are no red leaves left to be finished. Now we are done with the red leaves and we are ready to add green leaves. So we're switching to some green paint. We're going to start with a clean flat brush and dip that gently into the green paint. So just like we did with the red. We are going to just add some green leaves wherever we might see some empty space or where we think they would look best. These green leaves can of course go off the edge of the paper, and they can also be overlapping in some places if you want to have two leaves in a space instead of just one. Now we can switch to the small round brush, and we are going to repeat the same white outline technique that we did with the red leaves, but this time we're going to do it to the green leaves. Switching to the toothpick again, we can add the vein lines to the green leaves the same way we did with the red ones. We are ready to add the tiny flower buds that are in the very center of the red leaves, and we will be using some yellow paint with a few possible techniques. We can use either the end of a cotton swab or the end of a paintbrush, whichever it is that you prefer. They each make a slightly different mark when dipped in the paint, and they'll make slightly different sized circles. You might want to use both to have a little variety. Once you have made as many yellow dots as you think you would want, we can go back in and use a toothpick to add a little bit more detail. This time we are dipping the toothpick into the red paint and adding a tiny red dot in the middle of each yellow flower bud. Once the painting is completely dry, very carefully peel the tape off to reveal a clean white border.